We begin here in Ottawa, where Liberal MP and former Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault has announced he is stepping down from federal politics.
I leave proud of what we have accomplished together.
The move comes as the federal government has rolled back a number of climate policies in recent months, and Prime Minister Mark Carney reacted to Guilbeault's pending departure this morning.
It's for him to make decisions about his career and the next stage of career. All aspects of all our careers, even journalists, even prime ministers, get to a point where things change and they make people make decisions. And I very much respect that. And as I say, I've enjoyed it, and I wish him all the best.
Stephen Guilbeault joins me now. Stephen Guilbeault, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming in on a big day.
My pleasure, David.
This has been coming for a while, it seems. What was it that finally made today the moment when you're ready to make this formal move?
I think I really started thinking about leaving politics when I left cabinet. But at the time, I wanted to give myself a chance to try and see if I could have some influence over a number of upcoming decisions that I felt were important. Certainly the nature strategy, which ended up landing very well and very close to what I had worked on before leaving the nature portfolio in November of 2025. People may not have seen it, but in the spring economic statement, Canada announced its renewal of its support for what's called international climate finance. So under the Paris Agreement, OECD countries providing support for countries in the South. Britain cut theirs by 25%, I believe. France by almost 40%. The United States by 100%. Canada we increased ours a little bit. It's something I worked on as well with others, obviously. And the last thing, I wanted to see where the MOU with Alberta would land, whether or not we would save as much as the climate plan that I and others had worked on under Prime Minister Trudeau. And I was, like others, I was very disappointed with what was in there.
So was that it? That the signals from the MOU was that your ability to have the influence you wanted to have, it was a pretty final answer that maybe it wouldn't be there? I
think it's a respectful disagreement with the Prime Minister and the government on how to approach climate change. I've heard some people say that we had a plan on paper before. I respectfully disagree with that. An independent analysis by the Climate Institute, the Canadian Climate Institute, at the end of 2024, said that we were tracking to be at minus 36% in 2030, where we were supposed to be at minus 40. So we weren't quite there, but we were getting very close. And our plan was a combination of investment, of fiscal measures like carbon pricing, and of regulations. And now with the backsliding that we've seen, we will be lucky if we hit minus 15% by 2030. So we're still fighting climate change in Canada, but nowhere near to the same level of intensity that we did just a year and a half ago.
So the Prime Minister says that while the headline prices and everything on the industrial carbon price and the different equivalency agreements with Alberta are a change, he says that this is real climate action, and you're getting a carbon market here that actually works. Is he right when he says that about how things are going to work with Alberta on emissions up to 2040?
I mean, we have a carbon market we had a carbon market that was functioning, not as fluid as it could be, and certainly there were improvements that could have been made. But basically, what we did in that agreement with Alberta is we postponed by 10 years the implementation of the level of ambition we had for industrial carbon pricing, which means that the transition that we were hoping to see in many industrial sectors, certainly in the oil and gas sector, won't happen for a decade later than it would have otherwise. Danielle Smith would probably never admit this publicly, but when I was Environment Minister, I renegotiated with her a more stringent carbon pricing system in Alberta. She never implemented it. And we came to that, we started seeing that in late 2024. I'm skeptic that she will this time around. She has not proven to be a very reliable partner on these issues over time. In theory, the MOU was supposed to help with the referendum. She has decided to go ahead anyway. So I'm I'm puzzled why we would put so many eggs in the basket of a premier who has not shown to other provinces, frankly, and the federal government and Canadians that she can be a reliable partner.
What do you make of her move to do this referendum in the way that she has done it? Because as Minister of Canadian Identity, this unity and these sorts of things would have been part of your responsibility, and also as a Canadian.
Yeah.
We have a Quebec election in October, which the Parti Québécois is in first place right now in the polls. We don't know how that's going to go, but Alberta is going to put separatism on the ballot in October, so two big tests of the country coming. What do you make of this move by Danielle Smith after getting all of these moves from the federal government on the issues she's been hammering on about?
It makes me question whether or not she is a reliable partner when it comes to supporting Canada and being there for Canada. And I understand the Prime Minister and his team to be seized by what's happening with separation in Alberta. Obviously, any federalist should be. I think we also have, as you rightly pointed out, we have to be mindful that it's not a separatist movement in Quebec. It's an organized political party that has won elections, that has done 2 referendums. So it's not some fringe thing happening on the sidelines. And my worry is that there is a perception out there, certainly in Quebec, but not just in Quebec. We've heard Premier EB speak to that effect, that what we're doing right now is we're rewarding bad behavior, and this. I'm hoping that what we're doing in Alberta won't have some effect to encourage the separatist movement in Quebec. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I think this is something that the government should be very mindful of.
Right. Well, especially with the verbal and economic threats to sovereignty coming from south of the border, to have Alberta moving on this path, and who knows where Quebec will go, but we could essentially have 2 provinces tearing at the fabric of Canada at a time when the United States is threatening the fabric of the country, right? It becomes a very fraught and fragile moment in Canada. And
I think the Prime Minister rightly addressed this earlier this week, but it sort of sends the message that if you want something from the federal government, then you should threaten separation. And I'm not sure, as a federation, it's very healthy to respond the way we are specifically with Alberta. I mean, there is this perception, I've heard that from many Conservative MPs and leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, that under the Trudeau government we had a keep it in the ground policy for oil and gas development. If you look at the numbers, oil production in the oil sands increased more rapidly under the Justin Trudeau government than it did under the Stephen Harper government. So this idea that somehow Justin Trudeau robbed the people of Alberta of their economic development. I mean, we were starting to tackle the issue of pollution, but never the issue of production of oil and gas.
Yes, no, I think it went from a little over 3 million barrels a day to a little over 4 million barrels a day in round number. But even with that increase and with these changes, Julie DeBruzen, who succeeded you in the environment portfolio, she sat there and said, we are committed to our Paris targets. Are you really committed to Paris targets if you're not going to meet them?
So I did not hear that interview with Minister DeBruzen. I was in the seat for 4 years. I've been working on this for 30 years. Looking at what we have in front of us, there is no way we can reach our 2030 targets. Unless there's a significant shift, there's no way we can reach our 2035 targets. And in fact, in the signed agreement with Alberta, it doesn't say we're committed to reaching carbon neutrality. It says something like we're committed to striving to. So even the government now recognizes that we won't even be able to reach our 2050 carbon neutrality targets.
A moment like this, with a politician like you resigning from this government, people are going to apply their own analysis and their own assessment to the meaning of this. People on the environmental first side may say this is a sign the government has abandoned the issue of climate change. People on the pro-development side may say the Prime Minister is staring down. yeah, exactly. He's staring down, the extremists on this issue. How do you want people to understand the choice you've made today and understand this decision you've come to?
It's a good question. People come to politics for different reasons. I almost say I was recruited by Prime Minister Trudeau to come and help his government advance the fight against climate change, nature conservation, and in some cases we did so very successfully, convening 196 countries in Montreal in 2022. and helping the world commit to protect 30% of the planet. Like it was important. It was impactful on many different areas. And if I had to do it again, I would do it again. But my reason for being in politics is to be able to continue advancing these issues. And right now I see that on some of them, certainly climate change, it's not a place where I can continue advancing these issues. So I'm not giving up. As Voltaire would say, I'm not going back to my garden. I will continue to work on these issues in one way or the other.
Right, so you were welcome to stay in the party and in the caucus, but just kind of not willing to stay in the caucus at this point because you want to make meaningful change and you need to do that outside government.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment.
Okay, so one last question. I mean, we've heard about these 14 Liberal MPs who signed this letter to the Prime Minister. I don't know, I'm going to assume you're one of the 14, right?
You could assume that.
Is the level of concern limited to just those 14 MPs? Like, because the Prime Minister's response when I asked about that was there's 160 others. Like, how do you view where things stand on this issue of the environment inside the Liberal caucus right now?
I think it is larger. I would argue that it is larger than those 14 MPs. I think for various reasons, some people may have wanted to sign the letter, but didn't want to. They wanted to see if there was other ways to get the message through the Prime Minister. A letter from MPs to the Prime Minister can be seen by some as a very forceful thing to do. But I would argue that there are certainly more than 14 people who are worried about not everything on the environment. I've heard people say, it doesn't care about the environment. That's not what I'm saying. On nature, great. On climate finance, great. On climate, problematic. On environmental impact assessment and the proposals that have been made, some good ideas, some that I support, some that I have supported as an environment minister, some that I find very worrisome. So I think it's a mixed picture, and I think when it comes to certainly climate change, there are a lot of people within caucus and in our membership. I've heard from so many Liberal volunteers, members, people at the door who will also, it's not the number one issue right now. People rightly so are worried about a number of other issues, but this idea that people don't care anymore about the environment, I think is wrong.
Stephen Guilbeault, appreciate your time. Always appreciate your willingness to come on in good times and bad times, and good luck with what's next.
Thank you very much.
Former Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault is leaving politics, and on his way out, he is offering this warning about Alberta Premier Danielle Smith.
Danielle Smith would probably never admit this publicly, but when I was Environment Minister, I renegotiated with her a more stringent carbon pricing system in Alberta. She never implemented it. I'm skeptic that she will this time around. She has not proven to be a very reliable partner on these issues over time. In theory, the MOU was supposed to help with the referendum. She has decided to go ahead anyway. So I'm puzzled why we would put so many eggs in the basket of a premier who has not shown to other provinces, frankly, and the federal government and Canadians that she can be a reliable partner.
Guilbeault will officially resign his seat this summer. The Prime Minister reacted to that pending departure earlier today.
It's for him to make decisions about his career and the next stage of career. All aspects of all our careers, even journalists, even prime ministers, get to a point where things change and people make decisions. And I very much respect that. And as I say, I've enjoyed it, and I wish him all the best.
There was also some teary reaction to Guilbeault's resignation on Parliament Hill today.
We see a constant effort to roll back environmental protections and climate action. No wonder Stephen Guilbeault is leaving this place. I wonder who Mark Carney is. I wonder and I think my friend Stephen Guilbeault is probably wondering, when did Carney change? When did the Liberal platform become the Conservative platform?
The Power Panel is here for that conversation. Zain Velji is a former strategist for the Alberta NDP. Cameron Ahmad was the head of communications for former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And here in our Ottawa studios, Tim Powers has worked as a strategist for Conservative parties, and Sherelle Evelyn is the managing editor of the Hill Times. It is good to see you all. Sherelle, Stephen Guilbeault is leaving, but not throwing grenades. He says he respectfully disagrees with the Prime Minister on climate change. Doesn't trust Danielle Smith, though. What did you make of his exit today?
It was very measured. I wonder if kind of those grenades are going to come later once he's no longer wearing, his House of Commons pin in on a daily basis. He's never really been one to mince words, but given the fact that he is staying, as a Liberal MP until he leaves, as opposed to sitting as an independent and leaving caucus until such a time. That does mean that whether it is that was always his intention, whether he was swayed to do so, whether there are some conversations about, stay on board so that we can just get this legislative agenda over the line until the summer, and then we have a raft of by-elections that we have to fight. Is he really kind of continuing to take one for the team, so to speak, just to get it done?
Yeah, Tim, if he does throw grenades, they'll probably be carbon neutral. But I get the sense he from my conversation with him that he was welcome to stay, but just kind of no longer willing to stay, and that he has to do the fight against climate change outside of government because there's no place for him inside on it.
Well, to be fair to him, that's been his history, right? Other than his time in government, he's been a climate activist, proudly so, for a very long period of time. I think what's interesting about this is not so much what it means now, because it's not really a surprise to people now, but does it mean something 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months? What does it portend? Because Cameron would know this better, but for a very long time, Guilbeault was talked about, at least during Mr. Trudeau's time, as a key political player, not just in environmental circles, but in Quebec. So if Stephen Guilbeault goes and some others go, what impact could that have to Mark Carney? Right now, the Liberals are playing as you would expect them to play. That we expected this to happen. We thought this was going to happen for a long time. But I suspect if he's anything, he's a slow-winding detonator of potential problems for the Liberals. Too early to see. I don't think he really helped the Prime Minister today with his, I wouldn't call it a hand grenade, but he did throw some shrapnel there with his reference to Danielle Smith. Though, if I'm Mark Carney, maybe I co-opt that and say, look, Premier, easier to deal with you now. I got some of the troublemakers out, but I'm not sure it's going to be helpful over time to have Stephen Guilbeault saying to the rest of Canada and Quebec that don't trust Danielle Smith, because there will come a point when some outside support will matter to the Prime Minister.
So Cameron, to borrow the phrase directly from Tim, what does this portend?
Well, I think part of what Tim said is right, and part of it may be a bit of an exaggeration, because I think
Cameron, no, I would never do that.
I think Stephen is the ultimate team player, and as he's showing today. But he's also someone with extremely strong principles, and someone who built his career well before politics, as Tim mentioned, as an environmentalist, as an activist. And frankly, I think he deserves a lot of credit, regardless of how people may feel about his views, for being someone who recognized that you can be an activist and an advocate for a cause that you care deeply about within the establishment too. And he did that for a period of time where he made the calculation that he could make real change. And I think he has a strong record of results to show for that. Now he's seeing times have changed. There's a global energy crisis. The government has had to make very tough decisions. He doesn't agree with a lot of them. But he's still making all these announcements in a very respectful way. He's clearly maintained the respect of his colleagues and the Prime Minister. And he's continuing to do what he's always done, which is fight for the environment, fight climate change, but he's seeing that he can do that more effectively now outside of government. So I really do want to say kudos to Stephen for everything he's achieved and will continue to achieve. And I'm glad that he's managing to do this in a way that sort of maintains respect on both sides, which is obviously not always the case in politics. Sometimes things end on far different terms.
Yes, we've had a bit of that over the last 18 months. Cameron, Zane, I haven't seen anything yet from Alberta, but has Danielle Smith called this a national holiday yet, or a provincial holiday? I'm just wondering.
They need a referendum on that, David. They can't just do
it. This is how apparently it can go when you have elements in your party that disagree with the leader. Who knew? What are your thoughts on this one, Zane?
Let me correct him first. We would have a referendum to have
a referendum.
You got to keep up, buddy.
Sorry, buddy. Sorry.
No, absolutely.
Keep up. Yeah, exactly.
Why has everyone got to beat up on Danielle Smith this week? It's not like she's done anything to stoke, an anti-federalist sentiment across the country. Guilbeault's a huge loss for the Carney government. Let me put it this way. I know the Carney government has been veering to the center right, and Stephen Guilbeault may have been a hurdle. That much seems clear. He was a hurdle in terms of their economic development around pipelines. Clearly, that's why he's gone. I also want to highlight, though, Stephen Guilbeault has been a massive asset to this government, Trudeau and Carney-wise, in Quebec. The regional politics are also come in play. And I sit here as an Albertan, like talking to people about Quebec, about a province that isn't mine. So, you know, I've been on the other side of that. But I want to just highlight a very simple point, that this is not just the fracturing on the environmental side, the 14 people who signed the letter, the environmental caucus, and whether this can preview whether this will be the fracture that ultimately does Carney in whenever that may happen. There's also the raw politics of the geography and the asset that Stephen Guilbeault is on the Quebec side of things. So yes, while it is celebrations and, you know, another hurdle and obstacle cleared, you know, 9 bad laws and 1 bad minister, okay, so that part's gone here in Alberta. The long tail of Stephen Guilbeault, I don't think is just as clear as just being someone who's removed from the equation, especially with what he gives and continue to give this government in Quebec.